This podcast is brought to you by Reynolds and Reynolds. There are three waves of AI transforming our industry. Explore what they are, where AI technology is headed, and what these emerging innovations mean for automotive retailers at rayray.com/AI-waves for more info.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Tuesday, June 23rd, 2026. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, Nissan's CEO survives a shareholder revolt, but the credibility crisis is far from over. Porsche's new CEO lays out a new restructuring plan, and a memory chip shortage is quietly hitting automakers where it hurts. Plus, Alliance for Automotive Innovation CEO John Bozzella joins the show to explain why he thinks dismantling USMCA could hand China exactly what it wants.
The challenge is not competing with a Chinese company. It's competing with the country, China.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. Nissan CEO Ivan Espinosa faced a bruising annual shareholders meeting Monday, fending off a no-confidence vote, calls to remove him as meeting chair, and a proposal to reinstate fugitive former chairman Carlos Ghosn to the board. Shareholders also rejected a company-backed director nominee, a rare rebuke for management. Proxy advisors ISS and Glass Lewis had recommended voting against the candidate over independence concerns. The tumultuous meeting underscores Nissan's lingering credibility crisis, with the stock down 43% over 5 years as investors push back on years of decline. Porsche CEO Michael Leiters told shareholders Monday that the automaker will slim its model lineup, deepen cooperation with Volkswagen Group, and cut more jobs to revive profitability. Porsche's operating margin collapsed to about 1% in 2025, and deliveries fell 10%. The stakes are high. Shares have dropped from a peak of nearly €120 to around 48. Leiters said a full capital markets day is set for October 7th, but warned investors not to expect a quick turnaround. And BYD chairman Wang Changfu wants to be number one. Wang told shareholders at BYD's annual meeting earlier this month that he expects the Chinese automaker to surpass Toyota as the world's largest by 2030. That target would require more than doubling BYD's 4.6 million annual sales to match Toyota's 11.3 million. Wang says two things are driving growth: high oil prices tied to the Iran war, and a new flash charging battery that can hit 70% capacity in 5 minutes. And those are today's headlines. You can find more details on all those stories at autonews.com. The auto industry is losing a memory chip war. According to consulting firm Kearney, DRAM chip prices surged roughly 450% in just 4 months. GM, Ford, and Honda have each reported hundreds of millions in losses with no relief in sight. Joining me now to talk more about it is our own Molly Boygon, who has a story on the issue on autonews.com today. She's also the co-host of the Automotive News Shift podcast. Molly, welcome back to Daily Drive.
Thanks for having me, Kel.
All right, Molly, so GM, Ford, and Honda have all reported big losses tied to this. What's the near-term outlook for automakers trying to manage these costs?
Auto industry companies are competing with AI companies for DRAM, which is a type of memory that powers vehicle functions like infotainment and ADAS and autonomy. And the outlook is not good because prices have surged, as you noted in your introduction, but the manufacturers of DRAM have not increased their capacity in meaningful ways because these are the same manufacturers that experienced a glut, an oversupply of production in 2022 and 2023. So they've hesitated to bring more fab capacity online, more manufacturing capacity online. And so the analyses I've read say that meaningful relief isn't coming probably until after 2027, which also means that automakers are locking in their DRAM contracts at these high prices.
Now, you mentioned automakers may have to rethink which trims get advanced features. How significant a shift could that be for the software-defined vehicle push?
That's right. One of the main challenges of this DRAM shortage and the high DRAM costs is that it's just as the auto industry really needs this memory to enable all of these advanced vehicle functions that the costs are going up so much. So the way that the automakers can kind of absorb some of the costs or deal with some of the additional costs is to basically apply these advanced features that require DRAM to higher trim levels and just basically ask consumers to sort of bear the cost of that additional memory. And that means that you may see ADAS and autonomy features less as standard and more as additions to the car that consumers actually need to pay for.
Good stuff. Molly Boygan, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Kel.
You can find Molly's full story on the DRAM chip shortage at autonews.com, and we'll hear her interview with an analyst about the situation on tomorrow's episode of Daily Drive. Coming up, Alliance for Automotive Innovation CEO John Bozzella on China, USMCA, and what the auto industry actually needs from policymakers right now. That's next on Daily Drive.
3 waves of AI are transforming our industry as we know it today. Hear from AJ McGowan, Vice President of Research and Development at Reynolds & Reynolds on all 3 waves of AI in automotive, where we're heading, and what the latest cutting-edge innovations mean for automotive retailers.
So I want you to picture what it would be like on that same Tuesday morning that we talked about earlier with a full agentic infrastructure in place. Your service manager wouldn't start the day by reading reports. Ray hands them 3 ROs that need attention and tells them why. Your sales manager wouldn't spot check calls. Ray already routed the ones that mattered. The GM doesn't reconstruct yesterday. Ray reconstructed it overnight and gave them a summary. And your controller doesn't have to pull the deal level analysis every Friday. Ray runs it on Thursday and flags anything that's worth a conversation. Decisions can get made earlier in the day with better information by fewer people. And that's what the agentic wave actually feels like in your store. It feels and sounds a little bit like science fiction, but at the end of the day, it's not. It's just a faster Tuesday.
If you're interested in exploring how AI can improve operations at your dealership, visit rey.com/AI-waves. That's rey.com/AI-waves.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. With USMCA renegotiations formally kicking off July 1st, there's a lot of debate about what the agreement should look like going forward. Alliance for Automotive Innovation CEO John Bozzella has a clear answer. Don't think of it as a trade deal. Think of it as a competitiveness platform. And without it, he argues, the U.S. hands China a significant advantage. Bozzella sat down with our own Hannah Lutz on the sidelines of the Center for Automotive Research's management briefing seminars in Ypsilanti, Michigan last week.
Hi, I'm Hannah Lutz, Assistant Managing Editor of Content at Automotive News. I'm at the Center for Automotive Research's management briefing seminar in Ypsilanti, Michigan today, and John Bozzella from the Alliance for Automotive Innovation is joining me. So hi, John. Thanks.
Hi, Hannah. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Learning lots today.
I can imagine. I am too. And that if you and I are both learning something, that says a lot about the conference, I think.
Success. So trade and global automotive competition have been major topics today and throughout the year. And much of that conversation revolves around China.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about that. As we approach the formal renegotiation of the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement, which is July 1st, starts July 1st, I've heard industry leaders say that China is really the elephant in the room. Yeah. So how would a dismantling or significant change of the USMCA affect the US and North America's global competitiveness, especially with China?
Yeah, I think this is such a great question. And I did hear a similar theme in the parts of the conference I listened to. Here's how it works. If you think about what's happening in China, China is the world's largest auto market. It is the world's largest car manufacturer. It's the world's largest car exporter. So it's a formidable force, competitive force for the auto industry in the US, even if that competition were fair. It's not. Hold that thought. We'll come back to it. But if you think about competition, what the US really needs, the auto industry in the United States needs, is a competitiveness platform. It needs a competitiveness platform that can allow manufacturers to build affordably, to provide consumers with choice, and to be able to create products that they can export around the world. That's what USMCA does. So think about it not just as a free trade agreement, but as a competitiveness platform. And when you look at other regional automotive manufacturing platforms around the world, there are variations on this theme. So European automotive manufacturers in places like Germany are supported by lower cost Eastern European suppliers and producers. And so what we have similarly in North America is a platform where the US, Canada, and Mexico share together a platform that provides parts that flow across the border, supports affordable manufacturing, consumer choice, and competitive exports. That is what we need to compete against China.
So we've heard this idea too of a fortress in
Yes.
two ways, a fortress United States and then also a fortress North America.
Mhm.
What is the risk to a fortress country, a fortress United States versus North America?
Yeah. So I think the challenge here is, well, first of all, we've been operating as you in a North American, seamless North American platform for over a quarter of a century. Right? We go back all the way to the mid 1990s when what was then called NAFTA was fully implemented. And so since then, the North American auto manufacturing platform has grown up to support more jobs, more ingenuity, more engineering talent, and globally competitive production. And so unwinding that creates significant challenges for manufacturers in any of the three countries, certainly in the US. But the challenge with Fortress America, as opposed to Fortress North America, is I think Fortress America becomes a little bit less competitive. And what I mean by that is we don't enjoy the opportunity to have more, for example, more labor intensive work being done in Mexico. We don't have the opportunity to leverage platforms, manufacturing platforms, and assembly platforms that have existed for generations in both Canada and the United States and Mexico. So unwinding that, I think, certainly in the near to midterm makes us less competitive.
Mm-hmm. And there's a sense of, I think, protectionism happening in regards to China as well, protecting the North American auto industry. And I know that Senators Moreno and Slotkin introduced a bill to ban the import, sale, and operation of vehicles made in China. The bill would also ban the use of Chinese-developed connected vehicle technology. Yes. To what extent do you think Chinese vehicles could enter the U.S. without such guardrails?
Yeah, I think it's challenging now for two reasons. One, the United States has established very, very high tariffs, over 100% tariffs on Chinese-built vehicles that would be exported or imported into the United States. Secondly, as you know, the U.S. Department of Commerce recently established a set of regulations designed to address the security and surveillance threat of connected vehicle technologies that are made by Chinese companies that are either controlled or influenced by the communist Chinese government. The concern of policymakers there is that the data on these vehicles or the surveillance tools that these vehicles have available could be used for nefarious purposes, and data could be sent back to China, which would imperil the privacy of the driver or occupants of the vehicle. Or the vehicles, of course, have sophisticated sensing technology driven by a U.S. military base. They could film or take visuals of that military base and send it back to China. So that's what the policymakers were concerned about with that regulation. What the legislation that you referenced does is effectively codify or put into the law similar restrictions that were built into that regulation. And so the authors of those bills are focused on two things. One, the economic threat of unfair competition from China. The companies I work with every day can compete with any company on earth. The challenge is not competing with a Chinese company, it's competing with the country China. Right. And so, and all of the, unfair competition the dumping of vehicles, the outsourcing of their overcapacity, the heavy subsidies that are put into the industry in China create unfair competition. And then the second thing the bill does is address those national security and those surveillance threats. So why a bill if there's already a rule and there's already tariffs? I think the bill is designed to have more permanency and more durability than a regulation that could change with a changed administration, or that might have some flexibility or loopholes in it that could be used in a way that would allow Chinese actors to be present in the U.S. market. And so I think that's what the members of Congress are focused on.
So there's always a revolving door of policymakers in DC that will never change. But with so much on the table, with China, with tariffs, with multiple other things, what does the U.S. auto industry need from policymakers right now?
Yeah, I don't know if you heard. I had this conversation. You might have been in the room, or you might have been in a different session. I had this conversation with Duncan Aldred today on the stage, who is the president of General Motors North America, and I asked him exactly the same question. So his answer and mine may be similar, although I may expand a little bit. First, there needs to be a sense of stability and clarity about what the rules are, what the running rules are, what the direction of travel is in the regulatory and policy space for the auto industry. Why is that? We are a long lead time, high asset business, right? Our asset turns, our planning horizons, our company's automotive cycle plans are longer than election cycles. And so it's very, very difficult to shift from one side of the boat to the other side of the boat with every election cycle. So some sense of durability and stability. Now, there's no question elections have consequences. Of course they do. I'm old enough to remember when the consequences of those elections for auto policy meant, a shift, a pendulum swing, of a fairly moderate degree, or to use a sports metaphor, the game was being played inside the 40s. In other words, somewhat in the middle of the field. What we've seen in more recent election cycles is the game is now from one end zone all the way to the other. We're not just making adjustments to regulations. We're tearing up the playbook and starting completely over again. That's very challenging to the auto industry. And so some sense of stability makes sense. If you're looking at specifically about emissions, for example, what the auto industry wants to see is yes, we do want emissions regulations. We do need emissions regulations. It supports a competitive marketplace, and it supports the goal of reducing emissions and making sure that people are healthy and the environment is clean and safe. But what you want to do is you want to make sure that those regulations allow companies to be responsive to consumer needs and wants, and also to be able to plan for the future and invest in and be competitive in the United States of America. So those are the balances that have to take place. And so you need balanced, thoughtful regulation that supports innovation, drives for emissions reductions, and supports consumer choice. Now, you can make a similar argument with regard to safety and advanced technology. We need to continue to make progress. We have to continue to ensure that we protect our customers' privacy, that we keep them safe from cybersecurity risk, and that we continue to produce safety outcomes. So really, it's about balance along with progress in a way that responds to what consumers need and want today and tomorrow.
All right. Well, John, thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you. It's been great to be with you, Hannah.
Alliance for Automotive Innovation CEO John Bozzella spoke with our own Hannah Lutz. That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer, as well as our own Hans Greimel and Jan Gian for their reporting for today's podcast. We also had reporting from William Boston of our sibling publication, Automotive News Europe. You can get the latest news on USMCA, the DRAM chip shortage, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back tomorrow for more on the DRAM chip shortage with Kushal Fernandez. a partner at Kearney.
You cannot outspend the AI players. If you really need to compete, then you consider decontenting or taking out those features, and you would not need the memory.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.